Martial's 14th book, 190th poem, titled Titus Livius in Membranis. He writes, Pellibus exiguis arator livius ingens, quem mea totum bibliotheca capit, which means, the vast Livy is constricted with petty vanity, whose whole does not fit and takes up my entire library. And the reason I mention this is because Livy is really one of the main sources that we have on this time, considering that all of the Roman records were mostly destroyed during the Gallic invasion of the 300s BC. The next consular election put Publius Valerius and Titus Lucretius in control. Clearly the people seemed to like the Lucretii, as they trusted father and son to power. With the deposed king Tarquinius the Haughty now taking refuge with the king of Clusium, Lars Porsena, the two finally put to end the goal of Lucius Brutus, the complete exiling of all who bear the same name as the deposed king. And with this free casus belli for Lars, he took his horde and marched them to Rome. Livy tells of a man by the name of Horatius Cocles, who was stationed on the Roman side of the bridge Ianiculum. He saw Lars's army spill across the defenses and charge over the bridge towards his position. All around him the clatter of shield and sword upon the stone streets shot out there, ringing over the stampeding footfalls of his retreating comrades. He alone strided towards the enemy, shield raised and sword hand ready. He blocked as many of his own men retreating as he could, shouting, "Hold fast, ye men! If thou retreats to avoid the enemy, leave this exposed flank quite open to enemy strikes, then thou wilt see more of their kind on our Capitoline and Palatine Hill than are on the Ianiculum." To this many turned and formed ranks around him. He then called for the burning and the destruction of the bridge, but it were by whatever means the soldiers had to them. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, worried that by focusing on the bridge they'd leave themselves vulnerable to the enemy. Horatius soothed them with his bravado, saying, "You shall all take the bridge, and I shall take the enemy," and strode alone into the wave of the Etruscans. Resting his shield against the ground, bracing himself the knee to the fitted stone slab bridge, he pointed his sword to the enemy. So surprised by his individual heroism were the Etruscans that the sight of Horatius alone was enough to stop their advance. And where there was one, there became more. Spurius Larcius and Titus Herminius joined ranks with Horatius and formed a makeshift line between the walls of the walkway. With a moment's breath, Horatius charged against the standing enemy, slaying many and choking the street with their bodies. From behind them, the bridge saboteurs called that the bridge was about to give, and that they should vacate it while they could. Horatius told Spurius and Titus that they should leave him and escape with their lives. Livy put the next bit too well to not include it. Then, darting glances of defiance around at the Etruscan nobles, he now challenged them, in turn to fight, now railed against them as collectively as slaves of haughty kings, who, heedless of their own liberty, were to come and overthrow the liberty of others. Beginning the combat, his enemy cast their javelins, but they were all caught in his shield. The Etruscans charged him, but a loud crack and jolt of the bridge warned them of their short time atop it. Here, Horatius invoked, "O Father Tiberius, I solemnly invoke thee, receive these arms and this soldier with propitious stream," then dove from the bridge and into the Tiber, fully armed, swimming back to friendly lines and preaching the importance of valor. The Senate even noticed his deeds, putting a statue of him in the Curia and granting him vast tracts of land and enough gold to become Scrooge McDuck. Even the people were said to give him gifts of money that they were able to part with. But the war was far from over, as Lars changed tactics from storming to sieging, fortifying his position on the Ianiculum and constricting trade in the Tiber. Even the Etruscans spilled across the Roman lands, not behind their walls, so greatly that the herders and breeders would keep their stock behind Rome's walls. But all was not lost, as Valerius had a plan. He told everyone that on the following day, all the cattle drivers and sheep herders should exit from the gate known as the Porta Esquilina and down the road towards Gabia. And he expected what was to come next. That night, a deserter went to Lars and told him of the Romans' plan. Lars acted quickly and massed men towards the area so that they could gain all of Rome's animal and monetary value in one fell swoop. On the illustrious morning, Valerius tapped one of the two brave enough to stand with Horatius on the bridge, Titus Herminius, to make an ambush for the Etruscans. The other man who stood with Horatius, Spurius Larcius, was told to take up the youth corps and hold the gates that the enemy would pass by until the ambush was sprung. Then they'd spill out from the gate and sandwich the Etruscans. Valerius's co-consul took a few hundred men and sought to form a full box with Valerius's half-strength legion. trap was sprung 2 miles, or milia passum, which means 1,000 strides, from the gates, when Herminius sounded the attack against the roaming Etruscans, who thought that this was the entirety of the Roman force. They turned and engaged, but soon heard a shout and a tuba blast from the ramparts of the Roman walls, 3 detachments of infantry spilling forth from the Caelian hill, Nagncoline gates. And now that the Etruscans were hemmed in and prevented from all manner of retreat, they continued to collapse under the Roman pressure as they were rounded up and killed en masse. This was the last time that the Etruscans ever dared march this far south. But this far south did not include Rome, as Lars upped the ante on the siege and constricted tighter, the boa going in for the kill. Just as equally, Rome's vigor to achieve victory was best exemplified by a man Livy notes as being Gaius Mucius. He indignantly noted how Rome fought without fear against their kings, but now that they are free, they are encumbered and overwhelmed by a siege. He sought immediate action, but knew that if he left the gates without anyone being aware, he'd likely be called a deserter. Gaius Mucius stood himself before the Senate and proclaimed, "I wish to cross the river, senators, and enter, if I can, the enemy's camp, not to plunder or exact reprisals for their devastations. I have in mind to do a greater deed, if the gods grant me their help." The Senate assented to this request, and he concealed the weapon, donned a dead Etruscan shawl, and marched over to Lars's camp on the Janiculum. He somehow found his way inside the camp without getting detected. It was there that he spotted the men receiving pay from a man dressed in the exact same outfit as a man lounging on the throne to the left. Big Uh-oh. Gaius Mucius, in the biggest testosterone surge in his life, cuts down the men with the money. Fighting back unarmed soldiers with wide strokes, he tried to get over of the enemy camp. But fate wouldn't allow him to get away that easily. Lars called him over to his men to prevent Gaius' escape. But Gaius raised his sword and declared, "I am a Roman citizen. Men call me Gaius Mucius. I am your enemy, and as an enemy I would have slain you. I can die as resolutely as I could kill, both to do and to endure valiantly is the Roman way. Nor am I the only one to carry this resolution against you. Behind me is a long line of men who are seeking the same honor. Gird yourself, therefore, and think it worth your while. For the struggle in which you must fight for your life from hour to hour, with an armed foe is always at your door. Such is the word that we, the Roman, use declare on you. Fear no serried ranks, no battle. It will be between yourself alone and a single enemy at a time." Lars, stunned by this statement, directs him to be taken prisoner. Gaius Mucius could not fight off an entire camp of enemies, so he was soon overcome and subdued. During this time, Lars created a fire upon which to throw Gaius. Gaius Mucius was dragged over to the fire, where Lars demanded to know who and how many were in the conspiracy to assassinate him. Gaius refused. Lars repeated his question, but this time added, "Or I'll throw you on the fire." Gaius raised his hand and shouted, "Look that you may see how cheap they hold the bodies, whose eyes are fixed upon renown," and dove his fist into the flames. Lars bolted up in his seat. His shock turned to fear as the look upon Gaius' face was unchanged, as if he were still standing with his arms resting on the sides of his thighs. Lars immediately ordered his men to drag him away from the fire and towards the gate. Lars told the youth in Latin, "Do you go free, who have dared to harm yourself more than me. I would invoke success upon your valor, were that valor exerted for my country. Since that may not be, I release you from the penalties of war and dismiss you, scatheless and uninjured." To which Gaius Mucius replies, "Since you hold bravery in honor, my gratitude shall afford you the information your threats could never extort. We are 300, the foremost youths of Rome, who have conspired to assail you in this fashion. I drew the first lot. The others, in whatever order it falls them, will attack you, each at his own time, until fortune shall have delivered you into our hands." Returning to Rome, he had not sooner raised his right arm bandaged than the messengers arrived from Lars, declaring that he sought peace and wanted to talk terms. His first offer, "Return Tarquinius superbus to power," the Romans unanimously refused. Lars' second offer, "Give Lanir Veii," the Romans accepted. Lars asked for hostages as repayment for leaving the Janiculum. Rome granted this, and Lars absconded to Etruria. For the individual bravery of Gaius Mucius, he was given land across the Tiber, which later bore his name, the Mucian Meadows. He later got a handy cognomen, this being Scaevola, from Scaevus, meaning left, since his right arm was burnt before Lars. And the real moral of this story is, if you fight for Rome, you get free goods and free gibs, free goody goods, if you do good, but only if you do good.
If you're not, it's kind of shit out of luck, man. Sorry. The poor dude. Nah, man, he ain't got shit. These guys are A plus. I love them. I mean, they got lots of money. Look at them. They got so much money for this. Rome is light. Rome is love. Have a good night.